background. All right, so I've been building up the Unity, basically this AR Project 3D course, which I'm setting it up as something that we can all share and download. So there's one space we can throw all these things into, and that's that project space. And this is where I've been building samples out, and I did have a bug recently that I just ironed out of here, so all of the examples are working again, and that was a big deal before. Okay. So our goal is that is that we need to convert and take these images and bring them into something that we can turn into a scene in Unity. So the nice part that Unity lets us do is it actually it allows you to, like, the images that we're working with can be dragged and dropped. So I did a couple of things that are I did my screenshots. So if I show those screenshots real quick, like here's one screenshot, here was the second screenshot. They're saved automatically when you grab them in Mac. In Windows, you have to remember to save them like one at a time. But the benefit of this is these are all in pretty good shape, and what you do is you just drag them into a folder over here, and it'll bring those images directly into Unity. So I've got this screenshot, and let me just zoom in a bit more. What it does is we have to tell it that they're sprites. So sprites are basically 2D images that allow you to animate things. It's a first-class citizen inside of Unity. It says, I'm a JPEG, but now once I'm a sprite, I can now be used to animate or change things around, but we need to get that piece. So we tell it it's a sprite, and there's a pixels per unit, which is about 100 to 1. So this pixel to unit ratio is just kind of what scale everything is. And we're going to be able to play with this and change the scales around, but basically you do apply here. And okay, it gives me a little bit of an error, but let's see. Okay, but it did turn into a sprite. So when things turn into a sprite, when they're finally accepted, you have like what they are here, and then there's sort of the internal representation. So it tells you that it's a sprite because it has the little play symbol next to it, and I can expand and shrink it. The other part is anything about it is now kept here. So I can now do some very special things with those sprites. So I'm just gonna rename this as like start menu. So when you name, like in this case, this is going to basically be a start menu for us. So when I open this up, I guess the bottom line is if it's a sprite, I can bring a sprite into the game environment. And once the sprite's in the game environment, it exists. It's a first-class citizen. It shows up like other 3D objects. So when you want to put a mural into the world, you make it a sprite. It's kind of the logic behind that. So if I zoom back out, you'll see floating up here is the sprite. And the other part, because there's a camera, when I look at the world, it has front and back. So it doesn't do things like hide. But in this case, we have select number of players, we have a start, and we have a welcome. And so what we do with this is we're going to edit our sprite and pull those features out. And this gives us more power to mock things up. So I'm going to delete this real quick. I'll go away. I do have my sprite, and we have what's called the sprite editor. The sprite editor is going to give us some extra power, but you'll see no sprite editor window. Please download the 2D sprite. Okay, so there are packages. In this case, the 2D package needs to be added to our system. Once you grab it, like what we're doing today, I'm going to save all of this so that it's available. So we'll have those sprite editors and everything here. So I just want to run over go to Window. I'm going to grab the package. And let's do Sprite. So I want to make sure the Sprite information, Sprite editor, all of this is installed. And then let's do PSD, Sprite importer. Okay, here we go. So basically I'm going to import all of the 2D Sprite information from the system. So now this will be bundled into the project. So this is the Photoshop version. So if you're using Procreate and other things to create sprites, the PSD, which is the extension for Photoshop importer, is now in here, but it loads every piece of the sprite stuff. So this is in the shared space. And then, like, your job will be to figure out which images and things you need to sort of add in. Okay, looks like that went right through. So let me go back to my editor. So I wanted to edit the sprite. There we go. And so what the sprite editor does is not only, like basically in 2D games, right? When you want to get some efficiency out of 2D games, instead of making a copy of every picture, what you do is you have one big picture where you use smaller parts. So in this case here, I'm going to say this is going to be a multiple sprite. So I'm going to grab more things out of this one. So let me just do a thing where I can say this is going to be a multiple. And then I need to go to the sprite editor, apply my change. So you can slice these up, but I just want to grab different parts of the image. So if I wanted to grab things to make buttons really quickly, what I can do is I can start to draw. So I can draw my own little zones over. So by doing this activity, what it does is it creates multiple sprites out of the same object. So now, essentially, you've got buttons that look like the start button. And if you drew these out and they were in Procreate or they were in some sort of Photoshop, you'd be able to do like beautiful buttons, beautiful everything. But we're just prototyping, so we don't need to have it super beautiful. So in this case, I just grabbed them. I didn't label them, but whenever you click on one, you can give it a name. But for now, I'm just going to grab it and apply it. So now that I've applied it, you'll see down here, I've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, start, welcome, all of those things are part of that. Like, I've now created all the sprites I need for like a start menu. So for us to like move forward, the next part is we're just going to add a user interface. It's called the UI. And I want to add a panel that's going to hold our interface. So panel 1 is going to basically be our sort of outline. So I can do, because this is a sprite, I have what's called, let's see, where did I put it? That one has debug, this one has panel. So if I want to just add a panel into the world, I can drag over, I dragged one over. So let's see here. Oh, right. So what I didn't do was I didn't make one that was the whole picture. So if I have to go back to my sprite editor for a moment. Go to sprite editor. And I want one of these to be the whole picture. So I just need to drag another rectangle around what I consider the whole image. There we go. And then apply that. Let's see, that should be applied. Exit out. So now I've got this one, which is the whole picture, and I wanted to add that to the panel. So I just grab it, drag it, and drop it, and now that panel is going to be in here. And you'll see things like it gets all squashed and stretched. What we want to do is we want to tell it to preserve the aspect ratio. And now that the aspect ratio is preserved, you've got your first menu in the system. So we've got that. And then the other little detail is that it's got some transparency, and you want to get rid of the transparency, so you have to drag up here to make it solid. So once you have one image like that in place, you can say I've got a placeholder for a menu. And then what you want to do is you've got more of those images to work with. And that's where when I downloaded these other pictures, like I can do the same thing with the second screenshot. Basically, grab the right game. Oops. There it is. Okay. Oh, I see what's going on. So this is full screen. So if I go back out of full screen, I can find my menu, and I can just say, let's just drag that one in, and then do the same thing. Go over here, tell it that it's a sprite. And this one, we're just going to leave it as a single sprite. We don't have to do too much to it, so we'll just say apply. And then I can do canvas, and I want to add a panel. So I can have more than one panel. So the second panel, so this would be something like the start panel. And then we'll rename this one, and we'll say disclaimer. And let's see, so I have the disclaimer, and I was like, okay, let's give it a disclaimer. Let's drag that in. So that's added in. It's still called screenshot, and I say preserve aspect ratio. And now I kind of have them on top of each other. And what our goal is to only activate one versus the other. So like instead of seeing them all at once, I want to see the first one but not the second one. So I just go over to the activate button and I turn it off. So in Unity, you're able to activate and deactivate the buttons and panels. And that's what we're going to use to sort of make a dynamic menu, is activate and deactivate those things. And then there's the shortcut I want to show is like essentially I want to have a button on here. So I want that button to be like when I hit start, I can run over to UI. I can say I want to place a button on the screen, and I say, okay, there's a button. And then if I select it, I have an edit option for text. And I can say, so I can do something like say, this is a start button. And I can lay that start button out over the top. Or if I want to add the graphics to match, so if you had created them in a stylized way, you could grab the start button, drag it over to that, that's the start panel. So I want to go to the button real quick. I can just grab start, throw it on the sprite. And now, oddly, and actually for kind of nice, is if you were drawing out everything custom, let's see, preserve aspect ratio, there we go. We can scale it. And it's a little bit funny looking because I've got, what is it? Oh, because I have text. So in this case, I don't need the text. I'm going to have to erase the text. But now I have a start button that is truly here. So let's see here. Stop that. So I've got start. And if I move the start button around, you'll see I've got my own custom start button just by using the sprites. So if I do play, I'll be able to click it, and it clicks like a button clicks. So, but let me just do a quick little play button. We'll have to do a little bit of work on the menu. One more one more thing about the menu is that it needs to be related to the camera. So we have the AR. Oh, we'll adjust that later. But anyway, with the play, it sets it up. We've got it, so you click it, and then what we're doing is we're just going to activate the panels. So I've got like a button that says, let's say, start something. They have this feature called onClick. And here, I can grab the disclaimer panel, and I can say, when you click it, turn the game object on. Set active. So I want to set that one true, and I also want it to turn off the current panel. So I drag over here. So the start panel gets turned off when the other panel gets turned on. Okay. So the logic is in place so that if I'm able to see the menu in the world, right now this is giving you the AR world, not the real world. So it'll click here and it turns off that menu, and then it turns on the other menu. So I'll fix that in a second, because I want to get the third technique of bringing stuff in. Was like we collected the information out of the Miro board. So that was, we saved that in the downloads. So I had, like, say this JPEG. This is going to be pretty low resolution, but I have all of those JPEGs here in the document. So it's possible to bring in all of these at once. So if I drag this in, I'll close this one, and you'll see the tiny, tiny little zone over here. Let's see if I can make it. I'll try making things a little larger, but that's the file that I brought in. So this one now becomes a bunch of sprites and can kind of speed the process up. So I need to go to tell it that it's a sprite. I need to say there's multiple images in this sprite. And now that I've done it, I'll just hit the sprite editor. Once the changes apply. And you'll see now this sprite, it consists of a whole set of images. So what we do now is that same drag the triangle. So there are a couple of things. We can drag all the triangles in, but there are some other things like custom outlines. You can get it to slice it. Like, say, you can try to say, oh, automatically slice this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If this was a transparent background, it would work, but it's not transparent. So let's see if so it won't automatically slice, but we can do grid by cell size. So I can say how big all the slices should be, and then in this case, it cut everything up into really tiny, tiny, tiny cells. But if I have time, I can say these are probably 200 pixels in the X, and say 250 pixels in the Y, and then I can reslice it. And essentially what I do is I work until I get the right size, and I line it up so that it automatically slices all of them. So you just grab all the images at once. It's a really good thing, but you got to get your sizes right. And I could keep playing with it, but when you were like, okay, I just want to get this to, want to just get just what I got. I'm going to revert it, and I'm just going to use the drag. So like you just drag around, and we can pick these up pretty fast. So, and then you don't have to do, you can do like just the sub pieces. Yeah, you don't have to get the wood or something. I'm just doing this really, really fast. So spend about a few more seconds, and like here you go. You've now, like, essentially I hit apply, and the basic menu is lined up in here. So now if I open up, when I open that up, I have all the menus. So these are all the menus that I had planned for the game. So this is a nice thing when you export. You can just grab all that stuff and you can jump it in and then set it up in these canvases. So the way this would go would be, I would want another panel. So let's do UI, and then panel. We'll call that panel. Like, I don't know the content, so I'll just do like 3 P&L. We'll call that the third panel. And over here I have that background information, and I'll grab the third one, which was a walkthrough, drag that in place. It overlays it, preserve aspect ratio, and then turn the opacity all the way full. And now that's the panel ready to go. So I would just hit the hide button, and now it hides it. So this is sort of what we call the click-through prototype. And it allows you to click through that prototype. I need to do one thing in here, world space, camera space, AR camera. I need to make one mod, I think. More than one mod. So I have to look at what the world sees with the camera. So what happens is your menu, we're trying to get the menu in the camera scene. So I just need to make a mod. And once we make the right mod, this should pop into place. Screen space overlay. Let's try that one. There we go. So when we do the camera and we put this overlay on it, it now basically sets it up so that wherever you're going with your world, as you move your camera around, your menus are up there and available. So if you're in AR mode or if you're in game mode, now you have access to the menu system that you put in place. So it sees a little bit of gray. So when I hit start, like it showed the next thing. So this is where you kind of have to fix up a couple. I need to fix up a couple things. So I said to the start panel that I had a button, and it needed to go to the next. And then let's see here. The button. So I have to say this is my disclaimer. This is my start panel. So needed to turn it off. So that's the deactivate process. There we go. So there is a little bit of debugging logic-wise because you want one thing to turn off, the other thing to turn on, but you're kind of turning off and on staggered. So this is how the staggered part would work. And I have something in front of the menu, so I need to do a little bit of work, like move things out of the way, so that that doesn't pop behind.
Don't you need to just change how opaque it is?
Let's just double check opacity here, right? So we've got this one. Oh, I went the wrong way. Yeah, opacity, you want it to not see it. So that's the other part, is you need to choose, like when you're working, like say in AR, how much you want people to see through your menu and how much you don't. Most of the time I'm like, I just need to show something, so let's not see through the menu. But there you go, that's exactly the thing. So now you can kind of click through, and like with that sort of technique of like editing, you can highlight this box and turn the box into a checkbox and the proceed into proceed buttons if you need. But you definitely can set this up for click through. So like there was a proceed button. So you have to go out of play mode, but basically this is a rinse and repeat. You just do this again and again until you get through the menu system. And then the final thing I wanted to show on this setup is that I've got now, I want to deploy this into like a mobile space. Oops, this is a different adapter. So this uses USB-C, and I just wanted to show one time because I have video for this, and videos for all of these things that I'll share out. Basically, now that this is connected, we created that scene. This is my AR anchors. It's got a menu in it. It's going to be super annoying because it's not, we need to give ourselves time to play test, but we're pretty close to the end of this whole madness. So we're just going to have to see it, and I'll show that what it does. So this is pre-configured to have all the right settings so that when you say build and run, it takes it over to Xcode. And I'll show you the one change in Xcode that you need that allows you to push it out. And then once I do that, we should go into like a mode where you're trying to get those pictures, try to get those organized. And I can help you now, and I can also help you during the week to build out anything that you might need for the presentation. We are running out of time on stuff. So what will happen is it builds the Unity game, but what goes on here is that this build is actually going to Xcode. So it lost the connection to my phone, but took my phone off. So we need to tell it, oh, it's connected to an iPad now. So under device, instead of it being a phone, I'm going to basically say, hey, let's, didn't recognize it. Let's see if it'll wake up to this. Oh, let's see. I do want it to find, there's the iPad. There we go. So it needed a target, so it'd be like whatever phone you connected, or whatever iPhone you connect, including iPad. Then you run and hit the play button.
So in your debug, you have to attach the device to debug or test.
Yes. So we did all that work, but we do want to see it and test it. And so I had to attach the device so that it showed up, because we're working in, we kind of left Unity right now, and we're just going over to Xcode. And Xcode is mostly configured to work properly. And then what we're doing is we're watching it build. It's got to get through all the build targets. So we'll see installing to iPad. So it's going to say something like, going to ask me questions. If I do something, let's see what did we get here. Running it on the iPad. Oh, it takes a little bit to actually determine. So when I'm attached like this, I'm attached to a debugger, and you can see, yeah, so my design here, it's still doing the AR activity, but I made the menu so big you can't get around. It's like, this is why like testing and adjusting becomes really important. But I should be able to, yeah, so scale. It's got, we have, again, testing and adjusting is that this is the drawing of the start, but that's the real start button. So we need to work on aligning our graphics. So anyway, this doesn't have the setup, but what's going on behind the scenes is it's placing anchors. So whatever is behind here that I'm tapping, it's placing anchors on, but you can't see it. So we'd want to like shrink the menu and do some other things to make it more useful.
How do you know what scale you're working in that you're in Unity?
So the scale is once we pick the camera that we were working with, so that thing where it actually, I said it's got to be attached to the camera, that begins our ability to change its scale. So yeah, so over here in the Unity space, let me just, we didn't need that, we're kind of back over to, so it sort of floats this, and when you go back over to our canvas, I want to find the start menu over here, and then on the panel itself I had this button, and what I did was I kind of changed it around. So what goes on is the rectangle, this little zone says how big is it, what rotation it is, where is it supposed to be on the screen, what's its width and height. So all of that information your graphics are like in this particular corner. And they're supposed to stay relative to the panel, or they stay relative to the screen. So right now, this is staying relative to the screen, so that's actually where our difficulty comes in, is that it rescaled the part differently than I wanted. So I had placed it here, but when you saw, let's see, yeah, so when I had it here, the side, what is it? I need to change it quick. So this is a little bit more of a pain in the butt. I have to pin it to some part of the screen, and once I've pinned it, it's basically gonna stay here at that bottom portion. But we're kind of, yeah. This one actually is a bit of a pain because of the way I did it. Let me just double check over here. Screen space overlay. It's pixel perfect. Constant pixel size. Okay. We have to scale it with the screen size, because that was a really big screen, which was different than the screen that the computer had, which is different. So scale with screen is what needs to happen. So if I wanted this to stay here, I need to change my canvas setting to scale with screen size. There we go. So with that setting in place, I would just go back to build and run. It rebuilds it. It's going to run it, but yeah. So it's got this giant thing at the bottom at the moment, and I think it'll recreate it the way I just made it. Now it'll always be exactly the pixels and the relationships that you see. But there's a matter of perspective. That's the constant pixels. So pixels grow and shrink. That shouldn't be a deal, but if your resolution changes, it's like, how do you know where all the pixels go? It's not smart enough to guess the right thing, so you have to tell it what thing you want it to do. So we just did our build and run. I'm going to go look for where it's going to say. It says, lost the connection to my phone, which is fine. And this is like, oh, yeah, it's connected to the iPad, sounds good. So we'll hit play again. It goes back through the build process. Copies all the frameworks over, installing to the iPad. So we'll see if this did the little change that we're supposed to have. There we go. So it's back to running. Now what I didn't do was rescale it smaller. So nope. I'm very impatient. So now the start button, the start button is the right size. It's just in the wrong place because I moved it. So now things will stay where they're supposed to go. The other part is I'm saving this project and I'm going to set it up so that if you start with this project, you have all of these settings. And that way, like, you don't have to do what I just did. You can start where I left off. Anyway, it's a bit of a shortcut for everyone.